Thank you, Ros. I now move on and ask you to adopt the General Council report, sections 2 and 3. I now move. Do you agree? Thank you. We now move to section 2 of the agenda, economy and industry, and I call motion 13, defence sector skills, diversity and inclusion, and invite Prospect to move.
Hello, I'm David Foote, first-time delegate, first-time speaker. I'm also dyslexic and autistic. In the next 5 years, there's 50,000 high-skilled jobs, high unionised jobs that can be with transferable skills that can go to other industries. The barriers to entry are massive for these jobs. It's usually just white males, and we need to start opening up this the career wider. I've managed to see the world. I can't tie my shoelaces or spell my middle name. Doesn't mean I'm stupid. Diversity is at an all-time low and ingression to historic levels. Changing the hiring practices to open up the industry to all. It's about 20% of all autistic people are hired, and I find that absolutely shocking. People don't want to hire autistic people. People don't want to hire women. People don't want to hire people with different races. It's not on. We need to put pressure on management to hire people from all walks of life. We need to better equip branches to tackle equality, diversity, and inclusion. Reasonable adjustments need to be put in place to allow people to thrive. A 32 pence piece of paper, pink bit of paper, can change somebody's life, can allow them to read. We need to introduce fair working practices in the defence sector to reach everybody. We need to empower, to stop and tackle harassment in the workplace and in the MOD. We need to empower we need to make a safe and diverse environment free from all harassment. I want everybody to back this motion so we can open up this world to everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Do I see a seconder for the motion? Formally? Thank you. Any speakers in the debate? Can I move you to the vote? General Council recommends support. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Any against? Any abstentions? That's carried. Thank you. Colleagues, can I move us now to the group debate? Congress, we will now commence the debate on motions within this group debate listed in your order of business. The movers of the motions have agreed to remit and following their speeches, so can I now invite Susan Quinn from the EIS and the STUC General Council to move the General Council statement, which was distributed to you this morning and distributed to delegation leaders last night. Susan.
Morning, colleagues. Susan Quinn, moving the General Council statement on military spending. Congress, in recent years we've seen significant increases in military spending. The UK now spends more than 2% of GDP on defence. Much of this spending has gone on military assistance. However, while we recognise the importance of our defence sector, there cannot be a blank cheque for defence spending moving forward. Whilst existing fiscal rules increased UK's government spending on defence, it's likely to be at the expense of spending on public sectors, with significantly negative impacts on the Scottish budget. The General Council recognises the importance of the defence sector as a source of generally well-paid unionised jobs in an economy which has seen a catastrophic fall in manufacturing employment in recent years. The reality is that jobs and production in our defence sector are not offshored to the same extent that we see in our green industries or other parts of our economy. The General Council statement makes clear that we support increasing domestic production within pre-existing defence budgets. Our defence workers are highly skilled, and we must ensure that they have a role in achieving a just transition to net zero. However, the defence spending reserved, the creation of a Scottish Defence Diversification Agency, would require over £2 billion in devolved Scottish public spending to compensate for lost defence jobs. This is equal to the entire Scottish Government budget for rail and bus services. This cannot be the priority of our movement at this time. Congress, as we saw in relation to Palestine yesterday, our movement has a proud history of supporting peace and justice around the world. The General Council recommit ourselves to supporting international policy positions which, if enacted in good faith, will see UK and world defence spending decrease in the medium to longer term. We also repeat our call on the UK Government to discontinue arms licences for all sales to countries acting in breach of international law or where weaponry is used against civilian targets, including Israel, Turkey and Saudi Arabia. Congress, at our best, the trade union movement balances the demands of organising workers on the front line while campaigning and educating around the concerns of the whole working class. This debate is no different. We must protect good quality unionised jobs and we must strive for a better world that we all want to see. This statement does that. Please support the statement.
Thank you, Susan. Colleagues, can I now call on Composite E, covering motions 19, 20, 21, 23, 24 on military spending, and can I invite Midlothian Trades Council to move the composite? Thank you.
Chair, Congress, Rab Patterson, Midlothian Trade Union Council. We're remoting the motion in favour of the General Council statement. Congress, the United Nations has pointed out that there are currently 32 major conflicts worldwide. And in addition, there has been also a drastic decline in respect and compliance with international law. But instead of promoting international law and peaceful negotiated solutions to conflicts, our government is ramping up spending on its own conventional and nuclear arsenals and actively supplying weapons to war zones and rogue states. Britain already has the 4th highest military spending in the world. The government in January reaffirmed its aim to raise military spending from 2.2 to 2.5 of gross domestic product. Grant Shapps, our Defence Secretary, has said we're moving from a post-war to a pre-war period, warning that Britain could be at war with a number of states in the next few years. Britain is a major supplier of arms to Saudi Arabia, a country that intervened militarily in Bahrain to put down the democracy movement there, that blockaded Qatar, that intervened in Syria, that intervened in Yemen, that kidnapped the Prime Minister of Lebanon and tortured, murdered and dismembered a dissident journalist in its embassy in Turkey. The selling of arms to despotic and rogue states only stokes up international tensions and increases rather than reduces the likelihood of wars. We have a neoliberal economic system geared to maximise profit that is crippling our ability to provide a social wage through adequately funded healthcare, social care, education, affordable housing, transport, clean water, public services and facilities. The world's 6th biggest economy should not have 3.6 million children living in poverty. Housing crises should not be being declared by councils the length and breadth of the country. Councils should not be declaring or be on the brink of bankruptcy because of decades of underfunding. There shouldn't be crisis in our health service, or social services, education system, emergency services, care services, or welfare services. We shouldn't have homelessness, food poverty, fuel poverty, pensioner poverty, or poverty wages. These are the areas government should be prioritising, not arms and defence. With a general election this year, we should be intensifying pressure on all politicians to rebuild and respect the rule of international law and to stop pouring more and more money into weapons and invest in the services that benefit people.
Thank you, Delegate. Can I invite Glasgow Trade Union Council to second the composite?
Sisters and brothers, Jennifer McCary, Glasgow Trade Union Council. The first duty of government is to provide security to its people, But for security for whom and security from what? Security of the people is presented to us through a military lens, and the obsession with increasing military budgets at a time when the communities we live in Scotland are far from secure. Not only has military spending increased, but it has increased by 16% since 2010 as a proportion of government expenditure. And the Daily Mail and the Telegraph continue to commission polls to convince a Labour government that voters want to see, all they want to see is more defence spending. It is an orchestrated lobby exercise with the right-wing press, high-ranking military officials initiating the call prior to budget setting and now prior to a change of government. There's a persistent demand for more and more military funding. As climate targets shrink, military spending targets are ever increasing, and we live in an ever more dangerous and unstable world. A global crisis made of poverty and the climate crisis receive less attention, analysis and funding. And closer to home, the citizens of the city that I live in face insecurity in the pay packet with the cost of living crisis, care services that are vulnerable for the vulnerable that have been cut. Shockingly, life expectancy for the first time is reducing in Scotland, and healthy life expectancy has decreased in Glasgow by 2 years and across Scotland in 1 year. Our citizens deserve better. We deserve welfare, not warfare.
Thanks, Jennifer. Can I invite Edinburgh Trade Union Council to speak in support of the composite motion? Thank you.
Thank you, Congress Chair. Des Lockley from Edinburgh TUC, supporting the composite. In view of the contributions to the debate so far, I just wish to make 2 points. One is that Keir Starmer has announced recently that a future Labour government will increase military spending by 2.5%. The composite quotes a figure of 53 billion for annual UK defence spending. A 2.5% increase is about 1.325 billion. That is equivalent, we believe, to about 30,000 jobs in education. Increased military spending is not the best choice for improving the standard of living of Scottish people. More resources are desperately needed for the NHS and to create green jobs. If there was a choice between greater military spending and lengthening waiting lists, the majority of the Scottish people would choose investing in the NHS. And there is another agenda for increasing military spending, which makes an increase very dangerous. We believe that reactionaries in this country want to enhance the ability of the UK to wage war. The political elite in the UK believe in the illusion that the UK is still a world nuclear power. They still have imperial dreams. Whatever we thought for the reason they went to war in Iraq and Afghanistan, they wasted billions doing the bidding of the United States to no benefit to the British or Scottish people. Today we're at war in support of Israel. This is a war the Scottish people do not support. Yet the RAF shoots down Iranian drones and the Royal Navy fires missiles at the Yemen. Yet what they have not done anything about is the killing of UK aid workers by the Israelis. Increased military spending is not just about maintaining well-paid trade union manufacturing jobs. It also means making the world a more dangerous place with a greater risk of death and destruction for all of us. Please support the composite.
Thank you, Delegate. Congress, I now call on motion 17, military spending in public services and jobs. And can I invite Clydebank Trade Union Council to move the motion? Thank you.
Tom Morrison, Clydebank TUC. Comrades, My understanding is that we're remitting this motion in favour of the General Council statement, but we wanted to draw attention to a paragraph in motion 17, which didn't make the General Council statement, and we think it's very important because it exposes the role of our government in prolonging what is a very profitable proxy war in Ukraine. Because the Ukrainian working class and the Russian working class are fighting and dying with over 500,000 casualties, and it's the US with Western allies that stood in the way of peace talks. This was true of the talks between Russia and Ukraine that took place in 2022, and it's true of the talks that Russia tried to initiate with the US as recently as January 2024. In March 2022, Russia and Ukraine met in Turkey and negotiated a peace agreement that should have ended the war. Ukraine agreed to become a neutral country between East and West on the model of Austria or Switzerland, giving up its controversial ambition for NATO membership. Territorial questions over Crimea and the self-declared republics of Donetsk and Lugansk would be resolved peacefully, based on self-determination for the peoples of these regions. But then the US and Britain intervened through Boris Johnson to persuade, or rather instruct, Zelensky to abandon the neutrality agreement in favour of a long war to military drive Russia out of Ukraine and recover Crimea and Donbass by force. So, a profitable war for the military-industrial complex, that's what's behind it. US and British leaders have never admitted to their own people what they did or tried to explain why they did it. It's been left to others to reveal details of the agreement and the US and British roles in sabotaging the talks. Zelensky's advisers, Ukraine negotiators, Turkish foreign minister and Turkish diplomats, the then Israeli Prime Minister was another mediator, as was the former German Chancellor Gerhard Schroeder. The US sabotage of peace talks should come as no surprise. So much of US foreign policy follows what should now be easily recognisable and predictable patterns in which our leaders systematically lie to us about their decisions and actions in crisis situations. And by the time the truth is widely known, it's too late to reverse the catastrophic effects of their decisions. So I'm running out of time, but the 2024 discussions, the Americans were involved with that, and they came back to the US saying they're willing to discuss any aspects of US-Russian relations, but not peace in Ukraine. Too much money to get made.
Thanks, Tommy. Can I call for a formal seconder of the motion? Second, thank you. Can I now call on motion 18, British Overseas Policy and Defence Spending? Can I invite North Lanarkshire Trades Council to move the motion? Thank you.
Thanks, Conference. Speaking in remittance of the motion to the General Council, comrades, North Lanarkshire Trades Council hopes that we've shown Conference that with our motions we strive to be a force for peace and socialism. Our hope with bringing the motion to Congress is to highlight the dialectical link between worsting living standards and the decimating council and service cuts with our government's drive to international war. Comrades, no one in this room will argue that the Tories are a force for good or peace. The government's support and armament of the inter-imperialist conflict in Ukraine, the Israeli genocide in Gaza, the Saudi war in Yemen, and the subversion of progressive forces around the world is not because they serve the interests of the British working class, but rather because they serve capital, and nothing is more profitable than foreign war. Conference, the North Lanarkshire Trades Council believes that just like our aims to link the industrial, social and political struggles to fight cuts, we require a similar strategy to fight for peace. Our movement has a long history of this united front, whether it was the anti-war mass movements of James Connolly and John Maclean, or Willie Gallagher's organising munitions workers to walk out and support our rent strikes. The point we raise in our motions are a small but starting step to rebuilding the movement. Every union in this room should be bricking themselves at the poor youth recruitment and retention figures, as less than 5% of union membership is under the age of 25. Where will those union youth strategies go when we lose thousands of young men and women to conscription in preparation for the impending conflict? Conference, we ask that not only the STUC be an educator for peace, but that every union make peace the matter of the year, and that industrial strategy should reflect an understanding of the benefits of the diversification of industrial manufacturing and production. Thank you.
Thank you, North Lanarkshire. Can I get a formal seconder for that motion, please? Formally, thank you. Now move on to motion 22, military spending, Urban and North Asia Trade Union Council. Sorry, I've just realised their delegates have all gone him, so there's nobody to move the motion, so that falls automatically. We now call any other speakers who want to join the debate on this, on the composites, or motions either in support or opposition. And we now move on to the vote in the absence. Sorry, come up.
Conference, President, John Dolan speaking in opposition to the General Council's statement. Conference, I've been was a convener in shipbuilding for over 40 years. People in the Clyde want to work, but the reduction in the Navy that these things would bring, reduction in aerospace that these cuts would bring, would put shipbuilding in the Clyde out of business completely. 10 years ago, there was 50,000 people working the Erskine Bridge to Glasgow. We don't even have 10,000 now. Shipbuilding is in decline because of the reduction in the Navy. And the military spending needs to be increased. Like everything in life, things go up in price, so do ships, so does aircraft. It's not all about sending guns and bombs to foreign countries. It's about defending this country. I've said it before, I'll say it again. Russia has ships coming up and down the Clyde every day. They have planes in the air circling. The North Sea oil is prime to them. They need defended, and that's what this is about. Military spending. It's not all about bombs, it's about personnel, it's about materials, uniforms. Somebody mentioned Saudi Arabia and the Kuwait war. We sent soldiers in with boots that were not worth working. They were burning, they were melting. We need proper safety material for soldiers and sailors. That's what we need. We don't need a country of shopkeepers. That's what you want in this place. Every year I come here, there's motions to cut defence spending. There's motions to shut shipyards. There's motions to take down aeroplanes. We need to get a grip. It's not all about shipbuilding and civil servants. It's about defence and keeping the place safe. And I'll propose it.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker.
John Dennis, Dumfries and Galloway Trade Union Council, speaking in favour of the General Council statement and contradicting some of what was said by the delegate from Clydebank TUC, which I think is just an apology for Putin. Putin invaded Ukraine in 2022. No ifs, no buts, no excuses. That's what happened. NATO had nothing to do with Putin invading. To suggest the contrary is just a distortion of history. And also, Ukraine had just discovered the massacres at Bucha and had experience of the massacre at Mariupol at the time that he's talking about, that he's alleging that the British government and others scuppered peace talks. The Ukrainian people were incensed at that time by the actions of the Russian state and would not have countenanced peace talks that gave Russia the right to take big chunks of Ukraine. So, with that statement, that's all I think I need to say, and please support the General Council statement.
Thank you, Delegate. Next speaker.
Bill Ramsey, South Lanarkshire Trade Union Council and Chair of Peace Education Scotland, a wee charity set up a few years by Scottish CND. We're for conflict resolution. It's part of our day job. And if the leaders of the world were to take some of the skill sets that you deploy every day in relation to conflict resolution, the world wouldn't have been the place it is today. And at some point, after loads of Russians and loads of Ukrainian men and women die, they'll sit down and they will talk. Either that or some clown, not deliberately, will make a mistake and will end up with a nuclear exchange. No one will do it deliberately, but it'll happen as a mistake. So conflict resolution is what this organisation and all our affiliates do in a day-to-day job. And that's what we need in the world today. Not, we need Biden and we need Putin to be talking, not speaking. The world is in a dangerous place, and some mistake, the longer we talk about war, the more likely a mistake, the more likely of some sort of nuclear exchange. Conflict resolution, talking is the way forward. Thank you, Congress.
Thank you, Delegate. I see no further speakers, so we will now move to the vote on the General Council statement on military spending. Can I see all those in favour? Thank you. Can I see all those against? Thank you. Can I see any abstentions? Thank you. That vote is carried. Thank you. Sorry, it's just I've got too far ahead of myself and we're now having to bring some stuff forward to fill. Do we have the Pharmacists Defence Association to move motion 41, pharmaceutical access to patients' records? Yes, they're here. In the circumstances, I will give you time to come to the rostrum. Thank you.
Chair, members of Congress, Maurice Hickey, Pharmacists Defence Association, moving motion 41. This is a simple task that I have. It's to ask you to do something that will help provide a very positive outcome designed to deliver increased patient safety. The Scottish Government's Care in the Digital Age delivery plan is a work in progress, and its aim is to integrate separate health and social care records into a single record for each person. In Scotland, the current iteration of the plan has 3 stated aims, and the second aim is the one that concerns pharmacists like me. The plan is to build a people-centred, safe, secure and ethical digital platform allowing staff to record, access and share relevant information, and the aim is to improve the delivery of care. That's all very good, but it doesn't address a real problem that practitioners like me have in the here and now. The plan is going to take a long time, but we actually need help to get access to patient records today, as soon as possible. All other health professionals in the NHS including many pharmacists, have access to patient records, but community pharmacists do not. This month alone, I saw a notice to patients in a pharmacy stating, as a pharmacist prescriber, I do not have full access to patient records and can only prescribe for you based on the information you give me at the consultation. So we're working with one hand tied behind our backs. We're working and relying on incomplete information. How can that be safe when we're talking about health? And it doesn't work in the other direction. I email and send pieces of paper to the surgery. That's insecure, and I rely on someone else to record it in the notes, which I can't see. Doctors send me emails, they send me faxes, they sometimes post the information to me and it gets lost. So when I explain this to patients, and we're all patients, they're stunned to find out that I can't read or write their patient records. It's not good enough because we really do, as I say, we really do need this access now. And the technology exists. The companies that write our software write the doctors. When NHS England set up Pharmacy First in January there, they didn't have this ability. They put it in place within 6 months, within 6 weeks. Community pharmacy is already securely linked to the NHS intranet. We record and process lots of information. We get paid through it. We put clinical details on the platform, and we can even access relevant patient information on weekends, but not Monday to Friday when we're busiest. So even though we're subject to GDPR, we're professionally regulated and we're part of the NHS intranet, we're still excluded. Just to join us up would be a simple tweak, and it would improve patient safety, provide us with professional security and reduce our workload.
Can you finish up now,
I
please?
ask you to support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Can we have a seconder, please?
Thank you, President. Congress. I'm Paul Donaldson from the HCSA, the Hospital Doctors Union, and I'm speaking to second the motion from the PDA, motion 41, about access to clinical records. I don't wish to patronise you, but not surprisingly, for healthcare workers, the patient is the focus of all that we do. And anything that jeopardises our ability to do that will put the patients potentially at risk. So it's important that people have access to all the information and all the records that are there. And there's obviously an issue. The integrated care record that's going to come on, great, but we all know how good NHS IT is. It takes ages to come and then it doesn't usually fully deliver what ought to be there. So it's important that things are put in place before then. There are concerns, for example, if you haven't got the full information. I mean, I've known of things where an elderly patient has been offered their routine flu vaccine through their local pharmacy, and they're offered zoster vaccine to boost their immunity against shingles and so on, but they're immunosuppressed, and if they got the vaccine, they'd be very unwell. There are lots of examples like that. Urinary tract infections, people may have had previous infections, the patient doesn't want to, it doesn't remember, or they tout round because it's easier to see the pharmacist. So it's critical for information to come to the pharmacy and from pharmacy back to those providing care elsewhere, especially when it comes to things like pharmacy-only medicines, which are that, if you like, grey area between real prescription medicines and things you can buy from Asda and so on. And getting information about that and whether they're safe and appropriate to prescribe, if you like, from the pharmacist's point of view, and for the information to go back to the GP and others is critical. And unless people have access to that, that will all fall apart. And you rely on emails that get lost and letters that get lost in the post. I urge you to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. We have other speakers now, either supporting or opposing.
Morning, Conference President. Ian Hope, opposing motion 41. Now, before we get into the details, to be absolutely clear, we are not opposing the access to the information, critical information that pharmacists, particularly in the community, require, which is why we support the first 6 paragraphs of the motion 100% every day of the week, twice on a Sunday. And I will happily stand shoulder to shoulder and put those shoulders to the wheel to get those first 6 paragraphs over the line as soon as possible. However, paragraph 7 is asking for something completely different. It's asking for all records easily accessible for all pharmacy teams. That's from the domestic to the director in A&E, anyone and everyone. And we heard this morning from Paul about Unscrupulous employers, we have been asked to provide them with our most sensitive, confidential information. Now, I've got no doubt about the confidentiality that's guided by the pharmacists. However, when you look at the pharmacies, slightly different. April 2023, a member of staff in Tesco Pharmacy sent himself an email with a spreadsheet, 83,000 lines of critical data about patients. Name, address, email number, phone number, CAI number, and trust me, it wasn't so they could send them a get well soon card. That was going to the highest bidder. I thought, that's a one-off. May 2023, Lloyds. They provided the critical, sensitive details to Facebook and TikTok to assist with targeted advertising without patient's notice or without patient's agreement. And these guys weren't advertising face cream or cold remedies. No, they were advertising Viagra, chlamydia tests, thrush creams, irritable bowel cures, every one of them available over the counter. So I'm not asking you to oppose the information for pharmacists. I'm asking you to oppose the giving of that information to unscrupulous high street businesses who are out to make money in the back of your members' information. So I'm asking you to oppose, to secure your data, your members' data, your family's data. Please oppose the motion. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Delegate. I see no other speakers, so I offer the Pharmacists Defence Association the right of reply.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very, very brief with this. The cases with Tesco's and Lloyds, I believe, are still works in progress. They are being dealt with. They are breaches of GDPR. The Tesco one was a local one. The Lloyds one was a national one. Lloyds doesn't exist anymore. They've been sold. I mean, they were a model of bad practice. The asset strippers that took over with them walked away with a lot of money. And that will be dealt with in course. When it comes to the pharmacy team, as we refer to it, that is the pharmacist that is working the day. There's a responsible pharmacist. There's pharmacy technicians. Both of us are regulated by the General Pharmaceutical Council. Anybody else that isn't regulated is in training, and the regulated people that are there are responsible for the activities of them in turn. So there is quite a large degree of control within pharmacies. And everyone in a pharmacy is training, from somebody that started on Monday there to somebody like me who's been doing the job for 40 years. It never stops. One of the problems with this thing is the same pharmacist can see the same patient in different settings, have access to more or less information. We need the same information all the time, and we need all of the information really to work properly. All of the team works in the when they're doing pharmacy or dealing with prescriptions, we work in non-patient facing areas of the pharmacy. Nobody has access to these computers that isn't covered by GP, to the records that isn't covered by GPR. It applies fully. And where there have been breaches, there have been huge fines against the companies. They take it very seriously. And as far as people like me are concerned, if there is a breach and I am deemed to be responsible, I lose the right to practice. So I take it bloody seriously, I can assure you. I think just to bring it down to the last paragraph, the last paragraph says exactly as it should be. The whole team has access as appropriate. People sign in, and when they have to sign in and make the record, they can get to different levels, and it's all taken care of. That complaint's canard. I urge you to support the motion.
Thank you, Delegate. We now move to the vote. I can advise that the General Council is recommending to support this motion. Can I see all those in support? Can I see all those against? Any abstentions? Thank you. I'm calling that motion as carried. Okay, thank you very much. We move on to the next motion, which is Composite K, covering motions 61, 2, 3 and 65, the arts, creative industries and access to culture, and I invite Prospect to move the composite.
Thank you, President. President Conference, Richard Hardy, Prospect, moving composite motion K on the arts, creative industries and access to culture. Conference Scotland has long been admired for its culture and creativity, and indeed one need only look to the Royal Research Ship Discovery, berthed less than half a mile away from Conference, to recognise this pioneering spirit and sense of adventure. But what do we really mean by culture, and why should we be concerned? The best understanding of culture that I could find comes from UNESCO, and they define it as the distinct spiritual, material, intellectual and emotional features characterising a society. It encompasses arts, lifestyle, human rights, value systems, traditions and beliefs. So culture shapes who we are, and it affects each and every one of us, giving us all a sense of place, a sense of belonging, a sense of our identity. And as such, surely it is worthy of safeguarding now for us and for future generations. But back to the question about why we should be concerned. Well, of course, that's an easy one to answer. It's all about funding. Year on year, budget cuts in the sector, reliant on government granting aid, charitable donations and sponsorship have been cut, and this has a critical impact. And this is only exacerbating long-standing issues of endemic low pay and an uncertainty of funding, leading to precarity of employment. It leads to an increasing reliance on short-term contracts. We recently had a member who had been employed by the same organisation for 14 years on a succession of short-term contracts, which were often broken by more than 1 week, so that they couldn't use the existing legislation to ensure that their contract was made permanent. Colleagues, we all understand the fight against precarious employment, and it's endemic across the cultural sector. Unfortunately, additional funding often come too little and too late. So when we negotiate improved funding or the protection of funding with the Scottish Government, it often comes months and months and months after pay deals were supposed to come in, and people have already left the sector. They decide that they can't continue to rely on that precarious employment, and we are damaging the ability to protect and sustain our cultural heritage. We urgently need to reconsider funding models and bring in those that are sustainable and will ensure that future generations enjoy and can afford a trip to the theatre or to a music festival, an outing to a museum or an art gallery, or indeed take a walk in the countryside and address their mental well-being. Culture belongs to all of us, and access is our right. Please support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Equity to second.
Congress President Kirsta Miller, Equity, seconding Composite K. Definitely not a first-time speaker, as I was here last year lobbying for public funding for the arts. What do we need to do? Last May, Equity lobbied Holyrood MSPs to support our campaign, Fund the Arts, Feed the Economy. And we received overwhelming support and lots of selfies. And oh yeah, I really love musical theatre. However, several months later, we were again at Holyrood, but this time with megaphones and banners protesting yet another U-turn on funding. And now I think we're on U-turn number 3, which kind of puts us back where we started. How can companies plan ahead when funding seems eternally on a sugary nail? Why are arts groups pitted against one another, scrabbling for a piece of the dwindling funding pie? Our members and those of our other creative unions already have a precarious career, and we are always waiting for the other shoe to drop. If Scotland's biggest literary festival can disappear at short notice due to withdrawal of funding, what hope do small-scale theatres and art groups have? I gave you the statistics of the economic benefits of arts and culture last year, but it shouldn't come down to how much money the arts bring to the table. Spoiler, it's a lot. It is what kind of world do we want to be in, where only the rich and privileged can experience culture either as a participant or an audience member? When local authority funding cuts venues and community centres, where do they close? Where do youth theatres or orchestras and arts groups go? How short-sighted is it to close the avenues and opportunities for the next generation of creatives and to deprive communities of the life-affirming benefits of the arts? I move you support this motion.
Thank you, Delegate. Speaking in support, Musicians Union.
Ben Lunn, Musicians Union, speaking in support of this motion, and it is a particularly timely and important motion. Though I must admit, this is my third Congress, and this is the third Congress in a row where we have had to come in front of you and talk about a motion defending the arts and culture. And to be honest, I'm pretty livid about it, and I know the late great Rab Noakes would be equally livid that we're having to come back and asking for support from the trade union movement. I'm not going to go into the statistics and so on, we've got it in there in the motion. Ultimately, across the board, within the music sector specifically, our musicians are highly trained but the lowest paid of their equivalents, be it the Scottish Opera being the lowest paid opera musicians that exist in Britain, be it the Ballet Orchestra, be it the RSNO and the similar. We are in an absolutely desperate situation which has only been exacerbated because of the pandemic and because of years and years of stagnant funding. And ultimately, it comes down to the core question of what is state funding supposed to do. The Arts Council and Arts Council Scotland and what became Creative Scotland was one of the greatest things that was made under the Attlee government. This came in at the same time as the NHS. The idea that none of us have to go into debt to make sure we're living a healthy life, but also that no one has to bankrupt themselves just so they can have the life-affirming and enriching things that is the arts. And ever since that has been in place, it has constantly been chipped away because the Tories hate that we have access to the arts. And this is why we need to keep fighting for it, because if we lose it, it won't be given back at any single point. Ultimately, thinking of sort of anniversaries and other important things, on this day, 40 years ago, at the STUC Congress in Aberdeen, the STUC agreed to suspend all discussions so then 24 hours could then be given to support for the miners. That is a dedication that the trade union movement recognises that it can do and should be doing. And ultimately, the arts need that kind of support too. I don't want to be coming back to Congress next year asking for support from the trade union movement. If we genuinely believe in bread and roses, actually start fighting for the roses. We spend so much time talking about the importance of bread. Fight for roses alongside it too. Support this motion, comrades.
Thank you very much, Ben. And also next supporter, Scottish Artists Union.
No, I'm not Scottish Artists Union.
Okay, they were down, but they're not here, so you just fire away.
Thank you. Eddie Burns, EIS. Just want to give a kind of personal point of view on the impact of the arts on individuals. Back in 1983, I was an 18-year-old factory worker, and on a mad whim, I bought a ticket, a heavily subsidised ticket, I might add, for a performance of the Ragged Trousered Philanthropists in Easterhouse Community Centre. I'm pretty sure it was Borderline Theatre Company that did the production. It was absolutely brilliant. I loved it. This was the first time I'd ever seen a play live, and I've been going to the theatre ever since. And inspired by that performance, I joined a local community drama group and took part in various productions over the next decade or so. As a result of broadening my horizons via drama, I decided to leave the factory and went to further education college to sit my hires, and eventually to university and into teaching. And I've engaged in lifelong learning and trade union activism ever since. Now, the point of this prologue is quite simple. Borderline Theatre Company at the time was directly funded by the Scottish Arts Council. The drama group I joined was funded by a combination of public funding sources. My attendance at FE and at university and my teacher training was supported by grants and bursaries.
we want to take people out of poverty and to enrich the lives of citizens via access to participation in cultural activities, then we as a society have to pay for it. But that was then. What an embarrassing irony it is to look back on the Thatcherite 80s as a golden age of arts funding in Scotland. Fast forward to now and all the talk is about funding. All right, I'll go straight to the end. Please support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your cooperation. I see no other speakers, so we will now move to the vote. Composite K, the arts, creative industries and access to culture. Good to see all those in favour. Thank you. All those against? Thank you. And any abstentions? I have that down as unanimous. Thank you. We now move to a guest speaker to Congress. I'll be welcoming Lorna Glenn, Chair of the STUC Women's Committee. Lorna is Chair of the STUC Women's Committee and is Unite Scotland's Regional Women's and Equalities Officer. Would you please address us, Lorna?
Thank you, President. Congress, I am deeply honoured to be addressing the 127th STUC Congress on behalf of the STUC Women's Committee. It's great to see you all in this fine, proud city of Dundee, a city rich with culture, history and trade unionism. I stand here as a proud trade unionist, the Regional Women and Equalities Officer with Unite the Union Scotland, and as the Chair of this year's STUC Women's Committee. Congress, we meet at a time of great crisis, especially for women, both at home and abroad. The challenges women face are as diverse as women are themselves. Across Scotland, women are having to deal with an everlasting cost of living crisis, compounded by the fact that many are stuck in the seemingly never-ending doom loop of low wages, insecure work and high costs. The housing crisis has continued to deepen and childcare is simply unaffordable for so many of us. Gender-based violence continues at alarming rates and our services are stretched to the absolute max. And we have right-wing politicians and media trying to pit women against women, sowing division and inflaming tensions. But we will not leave our LGBT+, Black, migrant and disabled sisters behind. An injury to one is an injury to all of us, and we will not be divided. You've already heard some powerful contributions this week, for women in particular. The motions regarding our NHS and midwifery services are so crucially important. I don't know where we'd all be if it went for our NHS. Women are also statistically more likely to work both in and rely on our public services, and these jobs and services need defending with all our movement's strength. As I mentioned before, childcare is very much one of the key issues of importance to many women today. Childcare workers are still underpaid and undervalued, and the cost to families is astronomical. Some women are being forced to give up their jobs simply because the costs are so high that it is unaffordable for them to raise children otherwise. This should not be the case in one of the richest countries in the world. In the last year, the STUC Women's Committee has campaigned hard for women workers. Poverty remains a stark concern for many families across Scotland. Food for Thought, our free school meals campaign, continues to gain strength, pushing the agenda for a fully universal approach to feeding pupils at school. We have support from across the trade union movement, third sector and many politicians who recognise the need for children to have a full stomach if they are properly learned in the classroom. On International Women's Day, we held a fantastic event at the STUC offices in Bridgeton, highlighting our Hair Study project, which aims to raise the voices and stories of women trade unionists. Over the next year, we are looking to continue expanding the Hair Study project and explore opportunities to capture and tell trade union women's stories across the movement and beyond. Our stories matter, and they are crucially important if we are to inspire the newer generation of women coming forward through our movement. We also held our now annual STUC Women's Weekend School, bringing together women trade unionists from a range of sectors and experiences. We learnt and grew in confidence together, took part in our own mock conference, building comradeship and sisterhood collectively while having a lot of fun. And we've been pushing ahead with our silence compliance campaign. We want to tackle sexual harassment in all our workplaces and recognise that unions are also employers and need to take action to make workplaces safe. Working with Scottish Hazards, we've highlighted the stark reality and prevalence of sexual harassment across Scotland, both in and out of the workplace, calling for safe home policies. We are also calling for the Scottish Government to investigate and provide an action plan to tackle sexual harassment at work. As Chair, I want to see our communities grow in strength and influence, and we certainly have the drive to do this. But Congress, we must not forget our sisters across the globe. Whether it's garment workers in Sri Lanka or sisters defending abortion rights across Europe, they will have our support. And we must never take our eyes off our sisters in Gaza, struggling for food and seeing the place they call home destroyed in front of their very eyes. Witnessing a genocide being allowed to happen, some even forced to give birth and have emergency caesarean sections without access to pain relief. The horrors they are experiencing are unfathomable, and they are trapped. When we push for peace and equality, we can't leave anyone behind. Our unwavering solidarity with those persecuted abroad is one of the aspects that make our movement what it is. And I'm proud to stand here alongside many other visible trade union women leaders. Women like our General Secretary, Ros Foyer, who are leading the way and showing what many of us already knew, that women can lead and command the respect of a room just as effectively as men can. And we're lucky that later on today we'll be hearing from Shabana Taj, Wales' first ever BME General Secretary, a woman whose passion and drive is an inspiration to us all. But while we often heap praise on those most visible in our movement, it's the hard-working, often undervalued reps on the ground who we truly need the most. Shop stewards who, day in, day out, gain the trust of their members and stand up to poor practice, discrimination, bullying, and in some cases, intimidations. As we all know, it's not an easy task. But so many women across Scotland are rising to this challenge, and we must celebrate them. They're listening to their members, noticing the workplace issues that others are able to overlook, bringing them to light and making change happen collectively. Winning for their colleagues and members. Yes, women need unions, but just as importantly, unions need women. And to truly flourish, we must all work together as one. Oh, no. Thank you. We need justice, equality and liberation for all women. On behalf of the STUC Women's Committee, thank you for all your continued support and solidarity.
Thank you, Lorna. I was lucky enough to be asked to address the Women's Conference at the end of last year, and I thank you for the hospitality and reception you gave me and for the continued work that you do through the Women's Committee. You're an important, vital part of our movement, and the work that the committee and the conference bring forward is an essential part of the project that is the STUC. So thank you, Lorna. Okay, we'll now move on to motion 64, a music export office for Scotland, to be moved by the Musicians' Union. I think folk thought I was going to give them an early lunch. Sorry. Okay, that's convinced me. We'll break for lunch, and please be back at 2 o'clock because there will be a. All right, she's here. Sorry. No, we'll break for lunch and we'll do it after lunch to stop any confusion. Thank you. Sorry for being a fallible president, but you can all go away and come back for 2 o'clock. This will be your last opportunity to go to the exhibition stalls in the Marriott, so please take the advantage and see you at 2 o'clock. Thank you.